Did you find the take a test helpful? I'm trying here on every topic to put questions. I really don't just put it as like a regular question. It's also directing you to study the material. Is that helpful? Is there any place to change or? Go over those. This is really good preparation for the exam. Don't wait to the end, because then going over all of that, it will be a lot of work. So take it step by step. Secondly, remember the assignments are to help you to prepare the paper. I'm breaking like every week or every two, more correctly every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll put another assignment, and that will be another step for the paper, okay? Next week, I will post another assignment for what we're doing now.
Up till now, we only have to hand in the SWOT analysis, correct?
Correct, correct. Well, the SWOT is very important. You'll come back to it toward the end. Knowing the company is extremely helpful. Usually, if I know that you didn't have other classes, I know already you have other classes, you study SWOT analysis and all of that stuff. So I didn't spend the time on it, but it's a very important topic, okay, for corporate valuation. You can't really do a valuation on a company you know nothing about. You can't just go and look at the numbers, okay? When I did the valuation for Teva just before the collapse, well, I explored about their strategy worldwide, their acquisition strategy, all of that, who are their competitors, which kind of products they are in. It's very important, because later on when you do assumption about growth rate, and we'll talk about it next week, starting next week, you will see you want to back it up by knowing the company very well, knowing the industry very well. You will see we'll use industry averages for forecasting on a company, although the company might overperform, and you can take it into account. But you can't really take it into account unless you really study about the industry. So SWOT analysis is very important. Enjoy learning about the company, by the way. That's what I would do if I were a student. You know, you pick the company, enjoy the process of learning about that company. You know, take it with you after you finish. You know, follow up that company later on, even next few years. See if what you think today came out to be true. That's a really good exercise.
Is the SWOT analysis, it confused me in the Moodle, if it's due today or on the 26th?
I think I moved it to the 25th, but I left it open up to the 20th. I usually like to put a date after the day I tell you. So just in case, you know, the system went out, you know, you miss few minutes. So I give extra day. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the semester, everything's in the homework/assignments. It's to bring you ready to the exam. That's what you have in your mind, should have in your mind, and make it easy for you so you finish the paper toward the end of the semester. And I'm very flexible on timing, because I know you have a lot of other courses, but what's most important for me, you enjoy the process, and the process will be as less painful as possible.
Okay.
Some sessions are really hard. For example, today, we're going to continue, in fact, summing up what we started last week. What we're going to do today, it's the second topic and the second, the second subtopic in the second topic. I'm going to turn off my video so the quality will be higher of the internet, although I have the fastest one here in Israel yet. If you want, you can feel free to close the video, but so the communication will be better, I think. What we're going to do is revisiting this equation. We had some kind of theoretical discussion. I tried to really be very loose as much as I could and work only on the intuition on this formula. And this formula come to help us to value a company that gets to a steady state. What does it mean? If you have an asset that is going to grow G percentage every year, okay? And it's giving you this year such and such profit. I should really say, starting by the end of this year, such and such profit, and you know that it's going to grow that profit G percentage every year. What's the value of that asset? Okay? It's really theoretical because nothing is up to infinity, and you have to be really careful on the meaning of using an equation like that. That's what we'll do next week, okay? How will you use it in real life? Because nothing really works for infinity, and you have to make some few assumptions, and you must do them in the right way so you don't get really kind of weird results, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to sum it up of what we started last week and extend it. We're going to talk about the numerator, and I'm going to talk again about the denominator. We add them up, and then we'll say what this equation does. Then toward the end, we have this example here. We're going to cover it, how we do evaluation for a company. In fact, this is nothing but the golden equation. You can show it if you want, but I will show how you do it in real life. Evaluation in one method, we call the enterprise method or the indirect method. The other one is the direct method, meaning you're valuing the equity as doing a net present value of the cash flow that's going to be for the equity owners. In the indirect, we're doing the cash flow for the whole company, meaning cash flow for the shareholders plus the debt holders. And then after we find the value of the company, we subtract the value of the debt, we get to the value of the equity. In both methods, we will show you always have to get the same number. Otherwise, there is an error. Okay, that's the objective of today's session. Secondly, if you really want to play with this equation and see its sensitivity, I made a little editor here for you. For example, if you plug those parameters, the value will be 1,000. But if you, for example, increase the ROIC to 20%, it will change automatically. That will not be the most efficient way to compare cases, so that's why I built up add case. You will add another row, and then you want to compare this one to this one, and you can see what happens if that one goes down to 10%, or if it goes up to 20%. That helps you to see the effect of ROIC. You can do more cases, as many as you want. What happens if the WACC goes down? Okay, let's say it went down to 7%. Okay, wow, that's increased the value of the enterprise big time. And you can play what the effect of taxes. And of course, if the taxes goes up, I expect it to go down. Okay, okay, you can say, if I would be really nicer to do the following, let's keep the 25, add another one, and keep this one 7%, and just change this one. And you will see if the tax is higher, it will take a bigger piece to the taxes and will reduce the value. This is a nice way of exploring sensitivity of this equation. But let's dive into it and let's understand each piece of it, okay? I will sum up everything we did last time. So let's start. I think this is the second one. Let me start with this one. By the way, let's just review for a second. I will leave that one also. Let's start with this one. Okay, let's start with this one. Meaning, I want to explain the G over ROIC. If I have an asset, and that asset made a profit every year, and that profit going to grow at the rate of G, the only way the profit will go at the rate of G is only if A will go up at the rate of G. I will repeat that. If I'm talking about a case in which my profit is growing at the rate of G, and this year my profit is such and such, calculated by A times ROIC, ROIC, by the way, this is really a definition of ROIC. ROIC, it's defined in such a way as a percentage that if you multiply it by your investment, you get the profit, okay? So if you want that profit to grow every year by a rate of G, A must go up by the rate of G. If A would go up every year by a rate of G, profit will go up by a rate of G, assuming ROIC doesn't change over time, okay? In another word, we can also look at that as A equal to profit divided by ROIC, okay? This is exactly the same things. This one and this one, it's the same equation, just writing it a different way. The asset is equal to the profit over ROIC, or you can say profit is ROIC times A, okay? Now, going back to the idea that we want the assets to grow by a G percentage. That means I have to have A, I have to add to it A times G. If I invested $1,000 and I want a growth rate of G percentage, I must invest 3% of the 1,000. Otherwise, the assets will not grow. So this is, in fact, I should really say, this is a time 1. Is that right? And A, it's in time 0. This is my investment in the beginning, the total investment at the end of the year, okay, or the beginning of next year. It should be whatever I had this year plus my new investment. Now let's look at that. I can take the A out of the equation. I will have A times 1 plus G. That's the same thing. That means the amount of capital I will have in the end of the first year, it will be whatever I had in the beginning of the year plus the 3% that I invest in the company in order for the assets to grow a G percentage. Okay, let's look at what is A times G. A times G, we can, from this equation, we know that A is the profit times divided by ROIC. So how about in this one, we just replace the A by profit divided by ROIC. So what do we get? We can really just take the G times the profit divided by ROIC. And that's exactly what I just did now here. Meaning the amount we're going to invest in order that our capital will grow at the rate of G, it's this percentage of the profit. This G over ROIC, we call it reinvestment rate, as I wrote right here. G over ROIC, reinvestment rate in the sense it is the percentage of the profit that I am keeping in the company and do not distribute it as a dividend in order for the company to grow at the rate of G. So far, so good. Questions before I go to the next line? Give me sign of life, guys. I don't see you, so I don't really know.
All good.
Good? Good. I need a volunteer to tell me good, and if it's not good, please stop me. Don't hesitate. We have plenty of time, although it's a hard stuff, but you will see the videos, and I will try to repeat myself a few times so it will, will sit well. Okay. All right. So how much I can distribute dividend if I had only, if I had only shareholders? So I will take the profit, and from that, I will subtract the amount of money I need for the investment. So from the profit, I reduce the amount I'm investing in the company. We call it capital expenditure. So profit minus that amount, we can take profit out of the equation, and then we'll get profit times 1 minus G ROIC. This one already, gives me how much money I can distribute as a cash flow. You know what, how about we call that one, just add, I'm gonna use it later on. This is the cash flow the shareholders are expecting to get, okay? If I'm talking about shareholders. If I'm talking about debt holders plus shareholders, that will be the total dividend plus interest, okay? but depends what. If I do it for the whole company, that I should really add here interest. Okay, but depends if I'm talking about a company that has debt or it doesn't have debt. Most of the time they do have debt for many reasons. And so let's write it this way, that will be a little clearer. So CF1 is the cash flow available for the company to distribute out of their profit, okay? And out of the profit, they take some amount, they reinvest in the company. That's what left to distribute to the shareholders and equity owners. In fact, profit here, it's really, I should really have said operating profit. This is really what we have here. EBIT times 1 minus T. This is the operating profit available for the company to distribute to its stakeholders. Again, stakeholders, I mean debt holders plus equity holders. And the 1 minus G, this is the amount that can distribute out of this amount. The G over ROIC times the operating profit after tax, they're using it for investment. So if I want to break it down, I have EBIT times 1 minus T, that's times G over ROIC. That's what they have to reinvest in the company. The 1 times, that's the operating itself that I have after taxes. Any question about the numerator? Questions, guys? So this one is clear? Everybody happy?
Yes.
Good. Let's go down. I'm jumping down.
Again, what you just showed is the numerator, please.
Say again, sorry.
Can you explain the window you had open?
This one?
Yeah, what you have highlighted is the same as the numerator?
Exactly, exactly. It's the only thing is I was really talking loose. I didn't really tell you, you know, the profit is really ROIC times A, and we'll see in a minute. ROIC times A, it's supposed to be that EBIT times 1 minus T. Although I'm loosely, in fact, I need to fix this one. I should remove the 1 minus T here, okay? There's 2 parts that it's a typo that I need to fix. But basically the profit, it is the operating profit, which I refer to here. It is the EBIT times 1 minus T. And then the 1 minus G over ROIC, it's exactly what we see right here. Let's see the example, as I mentioned before. Let's look at the method on the right side. I have total assets 1,000. Return on invested capital before taxes is 15%. So 15% times 1,000, that gives me the 150. Is that clear? Good. If you notice in the equation, we do not subtract interest to calculate the tax, T times EBIT. We do not subtract the interest. The reason is because in the WACC, we're already taking into account that interest is tax deductible. Let me remind you again, how is the WACC built? Okay, how do we calculate the WACC? Anybody wants to help me? Remember WACC? It is a weighted average, RD, it's the interest rate, times 1 minus, anybody?
The tax rate.
Exactly right. So when I'm calculating really the WACC, I already took into account that interest is deductible. So if I do it again in the numerator, it will be a double counting. Then I have to multiply it by D over V. And just to remind you that V, it's the debt plus equity, okay? So D over V, it's the share of the debt from the value of the company. That's why we call it a weighted average, the percentage of debt from the total value of the company. We multiply it by RD times 1 minus T. So we take into account that the tax, the interest is deductible for taxes. For that, we will add the return on equity. We usually call it RE. Multiply, since it's not deductible for taxes, we do not multiply it by 1 minus T, but we do multiply it by the weight, E over V. That's why we call it weighted average cost of capital. It's a weighted average of interest after taxes, because that's really out of the pocket what the company has to pay, because we get back some money from the taxes. We pay less taxes because the interest is deductible. And this is the share. That's in the example I'm going to use, this is going to be 60%, and this one going to be 40%. So it's a weighted average of both of them. Fair enough? So if I will look at the example I'm going to show you in a minute, let's go back down. We'll see down, the weighted average is 7.5. How did I get here 7.5? Simply use the data that I'm given. The WACC is equal to, what is RD? It's the interest rate, 3.33% times, anybody wants to help me? 1 minus the tax rate, is that right? Anybody see the tax rate here? Yeah, here we go. 25%. So I have to minus 0.25. I should add to it the RE. What is the RE? It's the return on equity, 15%. Times, since, oh, I forgot here the over V. The over V is given as the share of the debt. It's 60%. So I should multiply it by 0.6. And therefore, the equity share is 40%. So I have to multiply this by 0.4. Fair enough? So this is the weighted average cost of capital. By the way, if in the exam, I just want to kind of see if you're really having a confidence, I might give you the WACC, can give you the WACC, and I ask you to calculate the return on equity. That should be easy. Because if I give you the WACC, you can calculate the RE, is that right? You just plug the whole numbers, and let's say I said WACC is 7.5%, you immediately can find out that RE must be 15%. Is everybody cool on that comment?
Yes, but we will have to have other information, right?
Exactly. I have to give you. I give you all the WACC, and then you can calculate this one, or I give you this one, you can calculate the WACC. I have to give you one of the two, otherwise you won't be able to solve it. Okay, so don't get confused if in the exam, instead of giving you the ROI, the return on equity, instead of giving you the 15, I'll just write WACC is 7.5%. You can calculate always the RE, just plugging here the way you will do it in that example. You say 0.75. So sorry, I'm missing 1 0 here. If I gave you the WACC, then you can do, okay, the same things. You can just copy the whole things here. And I ask you to calculate the RE. You just put RE here, and you solve the equation. It's one equation, one parameters. You simply calculate the whole amount here, move it to the other side, divide by 0.4, you'll find the RE. Don't get confused from those simple, really it's not even mathematics, I would say, simple algebra. Don't get confused, just be confident that you know what is the WACC. Learn it by heart, you really should know this equation by heart. You will use it all over the places, on your graduate schools, whatever. This is a must-know equation, and I always will give you all the other parameters. I might miss one of them, and you should be able to find the other one from this equation. Beautiful. So we now know how to calculate the WACC. So let's go back to this one. We have 150. The 150, let's maybe open Excel here. I think I did it, but I will redo it. So you will see how I do it. How did I get the 150? I have 1,000 as assets. I have ROIC 0.15. Therefore, my EBIT is, I'm just trying to show you how is this simulation has been built. Okay, we got 150, exactly like here. Interest, we do not subtract interest because we're doing it the cash flow of the equity owners and debt holders. So the 150, we do not subtract the interest. So we're getting the 150, but we do subtract taxes. And as I said, we calculate taxes on the whole amount. 150 times, I will put the tax rate right here in a second. 1 hour give me 0, but I put here 0.25, and that should do it. That's tax rate. So far, so good. This is the way. Let's put it in the same way. I'll put it as a negative. So we'll get exactly as we get into in this simulation. So that's the way we got the taxes. So how much I get EBIT after taxes? That should be, that's minus that one. Fair enough? Yeah. What did I do? They didn't like me. Okay. So 112. Anybody can tell me in the equation, what is the 112? In the equation here, what is the 112.5?
EBIT times 1 minus T.
Exactly. It will be this part. Is that right? It will be this part. Now, from this part, we want to subtract this times this. But remember, what is this one? G over ROIC, it's the reinvestment rate, correct? It's the reinvestment rate, okay? And also, remember, in fact, G over ROIC times all of that, it's really A times G. Or in other words, there's two ways I can really calculate it. In fact, I can calculate this capital expenditure or the reinvestment in the company at 3% of the A. One more time, we're going to this one. It's A times G. It happened to be, it's also the profit times G over ROIC, but it's exactly the same things. So 3% of the 1,000 will give me exactly the reinvestment that I have to make in the company. So let's write it in the Excel. So if G is 3%, the capital expenditure will be equal to, let's write it as a minus, fair enough? That's the amount the company has to reinvest in the company in order to grow 3%. Okay, what I have left? So I have, in fact, I can get into the free cash flow now. What is the free cash flow? Let's do plus the EBIT after taxes minus the capital expenditure. That will be what we call free cash flow for the firm. For the firm, meaning all the stakeholders of the company, shareholders, and debt holders. Now, last stage, that how do I find the value of the company? I will just take the numerator and divide, and I'm going to explain that in a second. I will take the WACC, and it means I will put it there, minus the growth rate. Of course, I will get an error now, but I will put the WACC here. And we already know that the WACC is 7.5%. Now the calculation will be right, and the value of the company is 1,833. Okay, so that's the way we got to the enterprise value. What is the value? By the way, I'm going to come back y divided by WACC minus C. Okay, I just want to explain that one, and I will get back to that division. Now I want to add another thing. The share of the debt holder's share is given 60%. Therefore, what is the value of the debt? That will be 60% of the value of the company. Fair enough? And therefore, the value of the equity must be equal. We can do it really two ways. We just can't do plus the value of the company minus the value of the debt, or we can do it simple, another way, doesn't make a difference really. We can take the value of the company times 1 minus the share of the debt, which is 40%. In this case, the share of the equity, I should get the same number. Okay? That's the way we're getting this one. The only one thing that I jumped or skipped, and I talked about it last time, but let's go over it one more time. I took the free cash flow of the first year and I divided it by the WACC minus G to get the value of the company. And the question is why this one is correct. See, we took the cash flow, we divided by the WACC minus G. Why is this a correct way to do it? Anybody wants to help me? Or maybe you help me as I go along. What do you say? Just give me a hint that you are there. Anybody there?
Yes, we're here.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. This one we did, the work we did this one. And now I would like, let's leave this one. Let's leave this one. I'll come back to that later on. Let's take an example. And that will be helpful for why we're dividing by the WACC minus G. Okay? Let's take another example. Let's say I have a deposit. Okay? And on deposit, you really get only the cost of capital. Later on, we will see why we create value only if the ROIC is higher than the WACC. We'll get to that later on. But for now, let's say I have a deposit. I deposited in the bank $100. And I want that deposit to grow 5% every year. Okay? So if the bank is paying me interest of 10%, so at the end of the first year, the bank will give me 10. Is that right? It will give me 10. The 100 times the WACC gives me a 10. So far, so good? Everybody agree?
Yeah.
100
Yes.
times 10, that's what the bank will give me. They will give me 10. 100 times 10%, that's what the bank will give me. I can take that money out and keep it in my pocket. My deposit will not grow. If I want my deposit to grow by 5%, I better not pull all the money the bank gave me as an interest. So if I want to grow by 5%, I must keep 5% of the 100. So G times the deposit, okay, or 5% times the 100, that's the amount I must keep in my deposit in order for my deposits to grow by 5%. How much can I take out as kind of a free cash flow in the first year? It's 5. The bank is giving me 10% of my deposit. I keep in the deposit 5, so my deposit grow to 105, and I can pull 5 out of the 10. So my cash flow in the first year will be 5. By the way, equation-wise, so we have 100 times the WACC minus 100 times the G. Pay attention, we can take the 100 out of the equation. If I take the 100 out of the equation, that means the cash flow, or the 5 I'm taking, it is really 100 times the WACC minus G. Or we can write it in another way. By the way, this equation, it's exactly the same as saying, you know what, the 100 that you have to deposit in order to get cash flow in the first year of 5, and that 5 to grow every year by G percentage, that's the amount. You can calculate it this way. Simply, if you move this to the left side, tells you that the 100 that you deposited, it's nothing but the cash flow you're expecting in the first period divided by the WACC minus G. Or in another word, if you want to get $5 this year, and that $5 will grow 5% every year, you need to deposit 100. Or if I go back to the Gordon equation, let's go back to the Gordon. If I'm getting this amount as my cash for the first year, and that amount is going to go up every year by the rate of G, how much, what is the value of that company, or how much is really like the deposit that I have to make? You take the cash flow divided by the WACC minus G, it gives you the value of getting that amount first year, which will grow forever in G percentage. So that's really the link between the two. Here I kind of broke it down, by the way. Please read that one. Okay, I broke it down to 2 pieces, so you can see what the numerator explains, what the denominator explains. And here is if I have a cash flow for the first year, and that cash flow going to go up by a G percentage, then V, it's the value of that cash flow will be the CFI1 divided by the WACC minus G. I hope that it's clear. Putting those two together give me the Gordon equation. Cash flow first year divided by WACC minus G. So that's why here when we got to get the 1833, we took the 81.50, which is the numerator. We calculated the WACC. We took the WACC minus G percentage, 3%. That gives me 82 divided by 7.5 minus 3 gives me 1833. And then we split it. It's to the value of the debt and the value of the equity. Now it's excellent time for questions, guys. Anyone? Is that clear? Anybody?
I have a question.
Clear? Wow, that's beautiful. We'll give a lot of time to practice. That's good.
Can I ask something?
Sure, definitely.
So the value that the Gordon equation gives us is the enterprise value, or it works for both?
It's the enterprise value. Beautiful.
Okay.
Now I'm going to give, yeah, go ahead.
Could you maybe explain another time the difference between indirect and direct method here?
Yeah, I will in a second. Okay. Enterprise first, it's looking at it as if I have one person that gave a loan and holds the equity of the company. Or you can think about it as a couple. The husband is holding the equity or vice versa. Let's say the husband is holding the bonds and the wife is holding the equity. Okay? How much cash flow together they are getting? That's the indirect method. Why do we call it indirect? Because first we're finding the value of both of them together, and then we're splitting it to 2. Then the value of the debt and the value of the equity. That means indirectly we're finding the value of the equity by first finding the value of the enterprise, and then we're finding the value of the equity. That's why it's called indirect method, or it's also known as enterprise method. By the way, I'm planning on adding on the right side here all those equations, how you get every line. So that will help you really when you're reviewing the material, you don't have to go and jump and look where the equation comes from. For example, EBIT, it's ROIC times the A. And then the interest, and then taxes, it's T times that amount, etc. I think that will help. It would be nice to put them right here, and then you can see everything. Okay, that's why it's called indirect. In a second, in the direct method, we're looking at the cash flow only of the shareholders. So that's why it's called direct. I'm looking at the cash flow of the shareholders, and then when I'm doing discounted, I'm not using WACC, I'm using cost of equity. In a second, I will come back to that. But if there's any more questions, I have questions, but if somebody else has before me, go ahead. More questions? If I ask in the exam, the 8250, is that correct or incorrect statement? The 82.50 includes the dividend plus the interest. Correct or incorrect? What do you say?
Correct.
Correct. Beautiful. Beautiful. I loved it. That's because this is really whatever left to distribute to the equity owners and the debt owners. You're absolutely right. It's include the interest and the dividend. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Wow, that was quick. That's wonderful. Okay, let's look at the direct method. Direct method, we don't really have the equation here, but you can make it up easily. So what do we do in the direct method? And the beautiful part of, you get exactly the same result. And I want somebody to ask a really good question in a second. The EBIT is the same way. ROIC times 1,000, I get 150. And then I want to calculate the interest I'm paying the debt holders. Debt holders has 60% in the company. How can I calculate that number? I have no idea. Anybody wants to help me? By the way, in real life, I would say at least 90% of the time people use this method, because really you don't really have to calculate that one, okay? And it's simpler, it's easy to explain. And this one, also the estimation in real life, it's a little harder to get the right numbers. So you will see, you will use in your paper this method, okay? But you always can derive this one. You can derive that number, it will be the same, it should be the same. Okay, but anybody wants to help me how I got 36.67? That's a hard question.
From the income statement.
Anybody wants to give me I will type the numbers in the Excel. Go ahead.
You took EBIT and multiplied by 40% equity share.
Say again, I will do it again. You do what? 40% times
EBIT.
the EBIT?
Yeah, the 150.
Let's see, that's right. No, I screwed up here. Equal, let's see if that's correct. Times. It's a different number, it's 60. How do you calculate interest? You have to know the debt. You need to know D. And you have to multiply it by RD. Is that right? So do we know D? Well, RD we know, it's given, interest rate, it's RD. So we have 0.0333, and I have to multiply it by the debt, but that is not given, only the percentage, 60%. No way in the world I can solve it, unless I know that the debt is 1,100. But I don't really know it, so I have to calculate this one in order to calculate this one. In the exam, I allow you to do that. In a minute, I will tell you how I did it in the simulation, and what is the right way to do it without even knowing the indirect method. But in the exam, you should use, and I allow you to do that, if you know the date, then you can calculate it. So 1100, it's the market value of the debt times the interest rate, give you the interest expense. Okay? What is really the way it's supposed to be? What you really need to do is like, if you know this is 40%, 60%, for this one you can calculate the debt. And then from the debt you can calculate the interest. But that's really like a circulation. You have to find the final result in order to calculate this one, and this one help you to find the final result. It's like what it's known as a simultaneous equation. I'm not really going to ask you to know that. That you come for graduate school, okay? For now, I will allow you do the indirect method. When I put this question in the exam, I always let you do the indirect. You find the debt, and since you know both methods will give you the same numbers, you can multiply the interest rate times the 1100. Theoretically, you should solve two equations simultaneously, and I'm not going to make you do it. By the way, that method called interactive method. I won't get into that in this course. Okay, is that clear, guys?
Yes.
How do we get to the interest expense?
Yes, but the direct method is not so clear.
The direct method is a little confusing. It's more natural because of the taxes, but beside that, it's more confusing, I would say. This one is really straightforward, very straightforward. But it's a nice exercise, and it's especially when you get this, the numbers are exactly the same, let's convince you that you're probably doing it right. Okay, so now that we subtracted the interest, because we're looking from the standpoint of view of the equity owners, from that EBIT after interest, we subtract the taxes. How do I get that number? Anybody wants to help? How do I get that number? So let's do this one again. I will put here the EBIT. Again, that was the 1,000 times ROIC, same things. And from that one, we subtract, I will put it in a negative. I put it as a negative, then we know that's the interest expense. Beautiful. Then we will do this one plus this one. That gives me EBIT after interest. Okay, or I can say EBIT, or let's call it operating profit before taxes. Okay, after interest, of course. Okay. So how do we calculate that one? Now, what do we do next? Next, we want to put taxes. Anybody wants to help? I'll take that amount.
You just multiply
Exactly.
this number by the tax rate.
Exactly. So let's go. Tax rate was 25%. That's the taxes, but again, I will just make it negative. That will be the tax rate. Beautiful. The capital expenditure is the same things, okay? If I want this company to grow by 3%, I have to put 30 reinvest in the company. But here I want somebody to ask a question. Go ahead, guys. So to calculate the capital expenditure,
You just multiply by the growth?
That will be 1,000 times the 3%, exactly as we did before. But I'm saying, if you do that, you're not looking from the standpoint of view of the equity owners. The 30 is what the debt holders and the equity owners supposed to put together. So this 30, you probably should break it up to two pieces. I will claim I should break it up to 12 and 18. Anybody wants to help me out why this is correct? That's only easy, by the way. Don't feel stupid. You are not. You really are not. It's really hard stuff. So
60% goes to the debt
no,
holder.
really. I mean, don't feel like you are. What these guys make me feel like stupid. I'm not. You really are not. It's hard stuff. But after you understand it, it becomes to be really clear. Okay. So let's look at it again. The company wants to go up by 3%, but I have two investors. I have debt owners and equity owners. When we looked at them together, so okay, we subtracted 30. That makes sense here. Okay. But now I just want to see how much the equity owner is supposed to put. The equity owners is only 40% in the company. Is that right? Is only 40%. The equity owners, the equity share is really 1 minus this one. So it's 40%. So the equity owners has to put only 40% of the 30. So here, I really should put here only 12, not 30. So if I put here 30, that should be wrong. So anybody wants to help me out? So where is that 18 coming back? See, the 18 has to be investments of the debt holders. You're going to keep in the steady state, the both of them has the same share. So if we're going to invest 30, we are two partners, debt holders is 60%, it should put 60% of the 30. That gives me the 18. And the equity owners is 40%, so it would put 12. So he's supposed to put 18, but I'm looking at the next row, increase in debt, 33. So I have two questions. Where this number 33 come from? And therefore, what is those two? If I will look at 33 minus 18, what is that number? So one more time. I know that if the company wants to invest 30, equity owners should put only 12. So debt holders has to put 18. But I'm seeing here that in fact the debt owners is putting 33. That means he's putting 18, his share. So the 33 include the 18. And in a minute, we'll find out how did I come with that 33. And in addition, is putting 15 and why. Anybody wants to guess? That's really probably the hardest question I will ask in this course. Don't worry, if you're wrong, that's good. Don't worry about being wrong, okay? Go ahead, guys. Okay, let's go slowly. What is the market value of the debt? It is 1100, is that right? So if the debt, it's 1100, and if the debt is going to go up by 3%, how much the debt has to go in order to go up by 3%? Wow, no surprise, I got 33. This is exactly the number here, isn't it? Well, let's make order. Let's make sense. Debt holders is going to participate in the increase of the company. The company is going to grow by 3% every period. So the first period is going to go up by 3%. That means the equity owners would go up by 3%, the debt would go up by 3%. Okay? Therefore, the debt holders has to put 33 in order to keep their share in the company. 18 out of the 33 is because we're reinvesting in the capital of the company, And 15, it's because this company is creating value. And this creating value, the debt holders has to pay for it. In another word, if the company is growing for 1833, is growing by 3%, the debt holders will pay his share of 3% of the 1,000, which is 60% of the 30, it's 18. And 15, it's the increase of 60% of the 833. If you got lost, just rehear what I just said in the video, okay? But I will repeat it. The reason the debt holders is paying 33 because his debt market value is, sorry, is debt market value is 1,100, and if the value is going up by 3%, that means I have to raise $33, okay? That 33, we can think about it as if it has two components. One, it's to invest in the original investment, like the book value of 1,000, and the 15 is because this company is profitable and it has market value above the book value by 833, and 60% of it belongs to the debt owners. So if you take 3% of 833 times 60%, you get exactly 15. You really don't need to do all of that. I'm not going to ask you that deep in the exam. That's more advanced. The only things I do really ask you to know how to get to D33. D33, I will repeat, it is the market value of the debt times 3%. Fair enough? That will be, now somebody will ask, okay, so what happening with those debt owners? On one hand, you know, they contributed to the company 600 out of the 1,000, okay? The market value of the debt went up to 1,100, therefore they deserve to be paid interest of 36.67. So 36.67, I have to pay immediately. It doesn't matter. I cannot hold on that. I can't just go to the debt holders and tell them, you know, since the market value is going up, I need to keep 33. No, you cannot do that. You have to pay the interest first. Later on, you have to go and issue or go to the bank and take extra loan of 33. By doing that, you're keeping the ratio of debt equity 60 to 40%. That's a little hard, okay? Let's wrap it up. On one hand, I'm paying interest to the debt holders. On the other hand, I am raising debt. The reason I'm raising debt, because the value of the company is increasing, because we're reinvesting in the company, and therefore I have to raise more debt to keep the ratio of 60 to 40% to be constant over time. By the way, there is a typo here. This one should be 82. I will fix it. I just discovered it. If you go into the calculation, you will see that if I do now plus 113, subtract the taxes, subtract the capital expenditure, and add back the investment, I will get 88.02. So it's 88, not 82. Okay, how do I can erase those ones? Yeah, I will erase this one. Okay, what is this is the cash flow for the, by the way, the typo is, I forgot to add the 33 here. So I just need to fix that. I already fixed it. I just didn't upload it to the server, but it will be done by today or tomorrow morning. So this should say 88, okay? This one should say 88. Okay, what is the market value of the equity? How do I get this number? Again, pay attention, that's very important. It's the cash flow. This time divide by cost of equity. How much is the cost of equity, by the way? Remember? Okay, I will put it here. Let's start again. I'll put RE here. We are given 15%. That's this one. It's this one. This is the return, sorry, it's this one, return on equity. So this is the 15%. So how do I calculate the market value? I take the cash flow, the equity cash flow, divide by this time. I'm not using the WACC. I use this 15% minus the growth rate. And that should give me the market value of the equity. The nice thing is those two numbers are exact. Otherwise, you know, the whole mathematics, if you want, you can come to me. I'll be more than happy to show you that mathematically you can prove that always will be the same. Doesn't matter how you change those numbers, but it's beyond the scope of this course. And if you're interested, you can come to me. I'll be more than happy. Okay? Okay, questions? Questions, guys? No questions?
It's a full circle. It's gonna make sense with the
Yeah.
hard picture.
Let's practice a little bit, okay? What do you say? If I told you the return on invested capital went up, will you expect the value of the equity to go up?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I want to change here. In fact, this is the nice thing. You don't need to go to Excel. See, this one I did just to explain in the way you used to, okay? So now you understand how I built that one. Now after I build it up, I don't really need to go to the Excel anymore. It would be really nicer to just do it here online, okay? If I change the return on invested capital, will that supposed to increase the value of the company? So
Yes,
what will happen if that go up? Let's say 20.
It will go up.
Yeah, because see, the EBIT will go up. Is that right? Okay, it's true. I'll pay more taxes. It's still going up by 3%. I'll have more cash. More cash, it means the company worth more. If the company worth more, that means the equity and the debt market value should be higher. Okay, let's do another example. What happened if I told you the return on equity went up? Will that increase the value of the company or will decrease the value of the company?
Increase.
Okay, let's think about it. What does it mean? What does it mean the return on equity is 20%? This is really not coincidentally I'm asking this question. What does that mean?
Means the equity owners are demanding 20% on their investment.
Beautiful. So if I give them what they want, I'm not creating value. I'm creating value only if I'm making profit higher than what they're asking for. Let's go, before I do that, let's go back to our original example. This is what the original example. Let's go to another simpler example when the return on invested capital is 10%. See what happened. I'm investing 1,000 and the market value of the company is 1,000. There is no creation of value. Why is that? Because if you notice 10% after tax of 25%, it's exactly 7.5%. One more time. If the return on invested capital is 10%, after taxes, it's 7.5. That means the company is creating, you see, after taxes, 100 minus 25, it's only $75. $75 is exactly 7.5% of the 1,000. That's exactly the WACC. So as long as the ROIC times 1 minus T, it's equal to the WACC, there is no creation of value. If I want to create value, it's only if the managers are capable to invest in projects that create more than the 7.5. So in another word, if this one will go up to 11, that means now the ROIC, it's after tax will be higher than 7.5. There is a creation of value of 136. Is that right? Instead of 1,000, now it's the company worth 166 more. That's because the ROIC is higher. The higher the ROIC, the more value they're creating. Okay, now let's go back to this one. What happened now if the equity owners, see the equity owners and the debt owners on average, they're demanding 7.5. So I'm not creating any value if I'm giving only the 7.5. I have to give more. So if the equity owners will demand 20%, that means the WACC is higher than the return on invested capital after taxes. In fact, this company, it's even worth less than the investment. The investment was 1,000. The market value, it's even less. That's company, we should shut it down because the manager are not capable to create profit after tax to satisfy the average return to those shareholders and debt holders together. So the more return the equity owners will demand, it will be harder for the managers to fulfill it. Therefore, you might lose value. So on the other hand, if the equity owners will say, you know what, we are like debt holders, okay? Let's say even 3.3, okay? I have a WACC very low. By the way, the WACC is lower because it's after tax. So let's make it a little higher. Make 5%. I think that should be about right. Yeah, it's close enough. Let's make 4.7. But this one is not tax deductible. So it's about right, okay? So if the equity owners and debt owners requesting about the same things, pay attention, this is after taxes, it's deductible, this one is not. So the WACC, it's about 3.3. What happened to the value of the company? It's huge. Why? Because the managers are able to give you 10% before tax, after tax is 7.5%. It's much higher than the WACC. And if the ROIC is much higher than the WACC, that's creating a lot of value to the shareholders or to the company. I hope that's clear. Let's go back to the original case. What I would like to do to play with all of that, let me go to the homework. And I'm going to emphasize some. By the way, this is your homework. If you notice, this homework is really review for you. Okay? Let's take the first example. We have 10% growth. I think we just did it. We'll do it again. And we have growth 0. The value of the company, it's 1,000. Return on invested capital after tax, it's exactly the WACC. No growth. Now I ask you to go to the next case, G equal to 0, increase the ROIC to 11, and then increase the G. Okay, let's increase the G, this one to 11%. There is a creation of value. And if we increase the growth, it's even creating more value. I repeat that. By increasing the ROIC, I created a value. From 10%, it gives me 1,000. That's the value of the company. But if ROIC goes up to 11%, the value of the company went up. And it will be even higher if I increase the growth. Now I want to do another exercise. I want to keep this one 10 and play with the growth. If it's 0, stay 1,000. Let's change it to 1. Stays the same. If I change this to 5%, no, 5 it will be, or 3%, there's a reason. It cannot be more than the WACC. 3%, the value didn't change. How about if I put 5%? Anybody can explain why the value of the company doesn't grow if I increase the growth rate? That doesn't make any sense to me. Well,
Because
it
the
does
grow you are taking out to the investors. They are withdrawing their money, right?
Oh, let's put it in a different wording. If the company is not generating value because the return on invested capital is exactly the WACC, it doesn't really matter how fast you grow. You are not creating any value. The only way growth matters, it's only when the return on invested capital is higher than the WACC after taxes. So if I will put here, that's a 12%, I created value. Now the growth will have effect. If I change it to 1, see the value of the company goes up. If I change it to 2, the value of the company went up, etc. The higher it will go, the higher will be the value of the company. So growth matters only when the return on investment after taxes is higher than the WACC. If they are the same, the growth rate has no effect on value. Okay? That's a very important lesson to learn from this one. Another case, and we talked about it before, if return on invested capital is below the WACC, let's take 8%, okay? No growth, the value of the company is below the 1,000. We're losing really money by investing in this company. It can be even worse if this company keeping the sum of the profit and trying to grow. If this company try to grow by 3%, hey, the value of the company is going down. And it's going down because they are losing money. So if I'm giving them more money by keeping some of my profit, I'm even losing more. Because even though I better take the money out. So this is a company I should shut down. This company has no reason to exist because they're not making enough profit to give me the profit the investors are expecting. So the line here, it's 10%. If the company is not making at least 10%, I should shut it down. And if it's making exactly 10%, growth has no effect. If it makes more than 10%, okay, as I demonstrated before, let's make even a bigger number, let's say 20, that's huge. Then I have a huge increase in value. And it will be even higher if you go to 4 or 5. This example, by the way, what will the investor will tell the manager? The investor or the shareholders in the meeting, they will tell managers, you are really doing excellent job. And if you're doing excellent job, you know, don't distribute dividend because, well, on my money, I can go outside and make only 15%. But you guys really making 20%. I rather the money will stay in the company. You got it? Everybody got it?
Yeah.
This is a very good insight. In chapter 2, he's giving some examples there, not in this way, but he's talking about growth and ROIC, the relationship. Here is very clear. You can really see it's clear. You can also play with it. The WACC, it's being affected by the interest rate or by the return on equity. I can ask you in the exam, let's go back to our original example. What will happen to the value of the company if in the economy the interest rate went up? Anybody wants to try? First of all, you can just do very simple, just go here and change it to 4, yeah, or 5. Anybody wants to guess before we try that and then try to explain? What happens if the interest rate goes up?
It would lower the value of the company because now the requested return on equity would be higher.
Excellent. The weighted average cost of capital will be higher. Let's try
So
that. Let's put
debt will be higher.
4%. Wow, look at that. The value of the company went down to 937. We're in trouble. Those managers will not sleep at night. They will say, why? We better increase our productivity. Then they become, because if the interest rate is higher, that means they have to generate more profit to pay higher interest. And the only way is by increasing return on invested capital. Let's say if 11% would be enough. Oh yeah, 11%, if they increase the return on investment to 11%, they can compensate for the increase of the interest because we see the value went up to above 1,000, okay? And that's really interesting. You can play with it a little bit so you can see the effect of interest. In the book, it doesn't go into detail, but this is a nice simulator to play and get insight very well. Let's take another example. Let's go back to the other example, the original one. What about if I tell you that I'm raising more money as debt? Okay, let's put 70%. So now debt is 70% and equity is only 30%. What happened to the value of the company? Go up or down? One more time. I have 60%. Here I didn't create any value because 10% gives me exactly 7.5% after taxes. So now some manager says, you know what? We're not creating any value. How about if we do the following? We go to the bank and take a bigger loan and rebuy some of the equity. I repeat, we go into the bank, we take a loan, and we repurchase some of the equity. So the equity will be only 30% of the value of the company, and the debt will be 70%. So what will happen? And anybody, this is a really excellent exercise for you. Anybody wants to tell me what really happened? First of all, we see the value of the company went up. Everybody agree? It was only 1,000. Now it's 1,384.
Lowers the WACC.
How that happened? Beautiful. The WACC went down. I changed the mixture of raising money. Debt holders asking for less return than the equity owners. Therefore, the WACC went down, and what I can do now is just, you know, I'm making return. It's true, I'm making only 7.5 after taxes, but 7.5 after taxes is higher than 625. And the only reason is because I changed the mixture of raising money. Well, somebody should ask a question now. Which question should you ask?
Isn't that called leverage?
Exactly, I'm increasing leverage. Isn't it something that people get scared of when company increasing leverage? You know, this is really makes sense. You know, I'm increasing the value. Hey, somebody has to say, why do you stop in 70%? Why don't you do 80%? See what happened? Wow, the value is even go up. I really reduce it to 5%. And you know, in fact, if you raise it even to 90, you know, you shrinking or you're reducing the WACC. So you say, wow, I'm increasing value. So why don't we even get greedy? Going to 90%. Oh, 90% won't help you because the WACC becomes to be lower than, so that the equation won't work. But let's say 95%. By the way, all those equation works as long as the WACC is higher than the growth rate. So let's put here 97%. Okay? Bingo, look at that, my God. The value of the company went to the sky. But what is the leverage now?
But then you don't have any cash flow also. Have a look at your cash flow. It's like negative something.
What do you see negative? No, it's positive now. Everything is positive.
The value of your debt is practically your enterprise value. You're practically owned by the bank.
Correct.
If you look at the left side, is like a lot of things are negative.
Leave the left side. I won't get into that. I won't dive into that. By the way, you're getting the same number. So that means it's probably true, okay? But don't leave the left side. Okay, let's leave the left side. This gives us a good insight, the right side, okay? By the way, the left side is more complex and a lot of elements, but it's always will give you the same result. But this is really like, as I said before, more than 90% in real life, if not even close to 100%. That's what people use in real life. Okay, let's leave that one, although we can explain it. But this gives us excellent insight. What happened as we increase the leverage, the WACC goes down. And as the WACC goes down, the value of the company goes up. But then somebody should ask here a question. What do you feel about a company that takes a lot of debt? How do you feel about those companies?
Not good.
How they gonna
equity
repay it?
matters.
They are very risky, is that right? So if you're giving them a loan, you get scared, don't you? You might not get your money back. You know, if 1 year, you know, when we're talking about EBIT, 15% return on, that's really on average. They might have some years high and low, fluctuating. So in a bad year, they might not be able even to pay the interest because most of their expenses, it's interest. So what will happen in real life if a company will try to do that? The debt holders will say, we're scared, we don't want to give you a loan. And the only way you can convince them is giving them a higher interest rate. So if I give them a higher interest rate, you know, even a little bit more, let's do 3.4, that's already reducing, it's increasing the WACC again, and we're reducing. If I give them a higher 3.6, the market value is going down more and more. If I give them 4%, 4%, well, it's went down substantially. If they go to 4.5, what's happening? I am very leveraged, but the value is not that high as it was before because the debt holders will start asking for a higher interest rate. How about if they will ask 5%? Well, now it's even shrunk more. How about if they ask 6%? It's went even further. How about if they will start asking 7%? Well, we're really almost losing the whole advantage of leverage. And that makes sense. So the moral of the story is managers should really find a balance between those two numbers. Increase the leverage, but don't make the debt holders requesting higher return. Otherwise, you will lose the whole advantage. So probably ideal, you get something like 80%, okay? And maybe you can pull them down to something like 4%. So you'll find a balance between those two. You bring the leverage to a certain level, but make sure that the debt holders will not ask too much interest. Maybe they will increase it slightly, but not too much. Therefore, as the summary, you can see in real life, many industries will have different leverage rate. You know, some will have 80%, some will have 60%. And what that one depend on? That depends how stable is the industry. If the industry is very stable, debt owners know they will get their money. I can raise the leverage, thereby increase the value of the company. Still, since my income is stable, the debt holders will not ask a higher interest rate. Okay? So that's why in many industries, you will see some industries have a high leverage and some industries have lower leverage. For example, if you look at a startup of high tech, you won't see any leverage almost. Nobody give a loan to a high tech company. Usually most of the finance will be equity. Because for the bank to give a loan to a high tech company, they will say, listen, you are so high risk, I'm not sure I will get my money. I will do it only if you give me 30%, and nobody really can afford it, especially not a young high-tech company. So in high-tech companies or a young one, you will see really low leverage. On the other hand, if you look at the utilities, let's say the electrical company, you will see a high leverage because their revenue is quite stable. They will finance most of their operation by taking a loan. Still, investors feel comfortable because a utility company usually have a stable flow of cash flow. I hope that's clear. Play with it, make scenarios. I put some scenarios for you to explore what the effect of all of that, okay? Please, this is really the main one. All those crazy cases, don't even bother looking on the left side. I will never give you on the exam the crazy one. They are a little harder to explain in the direct method, but the regular one, you should be able to understand both of them, okay? Questions, guys?
Yeah, can you just really quickly list all the which homeworks and which assignments we can do with what we've learned so far?
Yeah, no problem. But first of all, I would like to emphasize, as you get to know me, everything that I do in homework and assignment is to help you to get ready for the exam. And the assignment, it's really breaking the writing the paper over the whole semester instead of doing the whole things in the end of the semester.
Right, we know we don't have to submit it, it's for us, but just
Exactly. So I just wanted to say, okay, what we got so far, we got ready to the end of the second part. That means you should really go over the homework of those two parts and the assignment of those two parts. Next week, I will talk about growth. I will continue what we just started today, and I will add another assignment, okay? Of course, I will add also some questions. For so far, I added this again. You have the homework. You can look at this one as a homework as well, okay? This is like review questions for you. You can look at it as a homework, excellent review. So it's only what you need to do is only the first two. And I think I postponed the date up to the 25th. You can look at that date as suggestions that you should really finish it by then. If you ask me guys to extend the time, I usually do, but I don't recommend because then you accumulate material. And I think we are in a good progress so far.
Thank you.
And by the way, if you're uploading something, I always open it in the Moodle because I know that it's also more convenient for you to follow up with the rest of your homework. You see all your assignment in the Moodle. So I'm posting them here, but you can really read them in the Moodle as well. So you will find both of them in the same place. The tech test, it's a little more complicated to do in the Moodle. So this is the only place I'm putting them. But as I said, this is really like review, you do it and you can even forget about it, okay? And that's really, you get a feedback right away. You don't need to submit anything. I do have a record, by the way, of everyone that does that. So in some point, I might even send you an email. I didn't do it yet, but I'm asking one of my programmers to send an email to a student that didn't do it. Not to really kind of, I don't even know that it's sending an email, just to encourage you to don't leave anything to the end of the semester. Okay? More questions? Thank you. I will upload the video, by the way, to the Moodle and also to the website. All the videos, by the way, just a comment. I put all of them in the end of the topics. If you go to the bottom, I put all the videos right here. They are on YouTube, and this is really only a link to it. So I will edit here, and I will put it also on the Moodle. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Send me an email. Any technical problem, please contact your class representative. You can send me an email. I usually take care of any issue right away. Okay? Thank you, guys. See you next week.